Chapter 12, The Door. The book Ye Are Gods reveals the highway of light as it points the way to the very door of heaven. It also states plainly that no man can take another through the door. This is true, but for those who believe in the great and mighty promises of God and seek to live the higher laws by following the exact path Christ marked, he will help to open the door. That door which must at last be opened is the Christ door. After one has learned of the great heart center, by beginning to love with all his heart, the seals from his heart will be removed, and as it is opened wide to his love, the altar fires with one's own being will be comprehended, and he will know that he is the temple of the living God. He will learn that the sea of glass, or font of molten gold, is spirit, and that too is contained right within himself. And he will learn to begin to use these inner powers in humble, adoring gratitude. It is when one has learned also that the powers of the mind and has begun, in some measure, to use this divine instrument of thought correctly, that he will realize that he is divinely fashioned and has a great and marvelous destiny to fulfill. It is then that he will become aware of a great door, and he will know that it is the Christ door. The triple signal required for opening that door or veil is that each individual, of himself, must have asked and sought and knocked. That door is closed when one first becomes aware of it, but he will understand the words, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come in and sup or feast with him, and he with me." That door is the most important door in the temple of God. That door is the Christ door. It is the door that bypasses death. It is the front door into the higher realms. Since the beginning of mortality, Christ has stood on the other side of that door, calling. It has been his voice, echoing through one's soul, that man has tried to silence, or escape by increased outside interest, dissipation, or vain and wasted squandering of his thought energies. As one approaches this door, he realizes that even the door itself is made of light. It is as though it were, in some manner, translucent. Light seems to almost melt, though, as one reaches it, seeking to follow the voice of Christ as it leads one onto the final revelation of glory. One is led to this door by learning to listen to his voice of love and promise, and his voice is only heard by learning to be still and know that I am God. When all outside thoughts and disturbances are silenced, one truly hears his voice, and as one learns to listen, he will begin to comprehend the marvel and the wonder of that divine voice which contains the very laws of his own being, and is so filled with promise and glory, it is impossible not to desire to follow it. It is almost like the voice of eternity calling one home, or inviting one to leave the rock-hewn path of sorrow and trial and heartbreak, and enter into the glory contained within the realms of eternal light. Just by giving ear to that voice, as one becomes still within, one learns the power of the promise. "Come unto me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Within the peace and comfort of that voice is a strength that is tremendous and a vitality that never tires. One is but to turn within with listening ears to receive the power to finish any task in rested satisfaction. It is the source of energy within man. As one learns to listen and be still, he realizes that his voice contains the glorified, triumphant song of the universe, the great celestial vibration of creation, and that song finds its own echo in man's own open heart. It is a song of love and praise and gratitude made perfect and sublime by its fulfillment. And one realizes that even if he owned the whole world and was yet empty of love, he would be poor and wretched and miserable and blind and naked. He would comprehend that though he held all power, even that he could heal the blind, raise the dead, remove mountains, give all his possessions to the poor, and even his body be burned, and had not this love, it would be meaningless and empty. It is then one realizes that love is the very voice of God. It is the pearl of great price, the jewel buried in the field which, when a man finds or comprehends, he will sell all that he owns to possess it. This love is also the power of Christ that will draw all men to him as they learn to be still, or learn to silence the outside turmoil, quieting their thoughts as they become tranquilized in an inner peace, the peace beyond thought. It is also true that God is love. It is his essence and his power and the substance of his being. As one begins to comprehend and desire the gift of perfect love, he realizes that to be an instrument in the hands of the Almighty is the greatest boon possible to receive. All other desires melt before that one precious longing to serve only God. This reverent desire contains the complete surrender of the self. It is then one knows that the perfect pattern of himself is contained in the mind and will of God. He knows also that this pattern or seed of his own perfection is also implanted within his own soul. He will want that pattern or divine seed of himself to reach its full perfection of unfoldment more than he can possibly desire any physical thing in existence. All physical desires are passing and transitory. Only that which concerns his soul is permanent and lasting. Only the completion of himself into the perfection of God's original plan for him has any eternal significance. As one begins to get a glimpse of the marvel and the wonder and perfection of God's plan, he will desire God's will to be accomplished and fulfilled more than anything else, for he will know that only God's will is perfect. Only God's plan is gloriously divine. One will then realize that to be an instrument in the hands of the Almighty, he must keep himself in tune with that vibration of loving praise and singing gratitude that has at last become a very part of himself. That divine vibration must become the rhythm of his own being as he is prepared to take his place in the perfected pattern of creation. With love outpouring, one will kneel before that door, that great Christ door, and he will know that Christ is the way which man was asked to accept. He will then prove his belief by fulfilling the last principles of righteousness. It is then one actually becomes the vibration of love, praise, and thanksgiving. He takes upon himself that vibration or name. Then he will not only have the power to do the works which Christ did, but will be able to go on and do the greater works. The path Christ marked is the path right within man. It is the way of truth. It is the path of light. This way leads to the great Christ door, the door of the resurrection. This divine way has nothing to do with creeds and outside forms and rituals with which but cleanse the outside of the cup. Churches were established to reveal this inner way, but all have failed. The churches have become obstructions to the true way, as they have blocked it unknowingly and unintentionally. Their fundraising campaigns, social activities, and outside works and numerous meetings only cleanse the outside of the cup. Their every effort is to keep all of one's faculties focused on the outside. It is the allegiance to the leaders and outward forms that is required by membership. The way of Christ is not contained in any outward organization. It is the way that is contained right within man himself. It is the way of light, even the light of Christ, which is given to abide in every man who cometh into the world. This is the way in which a man may walk and not fail, for it is illuminated by his presence, even by the light of him who marked the way. It is a path of glory, the way of peace, the road of peace, and it leads to his door, the great Christ door. That Christ door is the only direct entrance into his kingdom, the kingdom that is not of this world, the kingdom within. As one fulfills the command to purify themselves, even as he is pure, he will eventually have to reach that door. It is impossible to keep going and not get there. This point of attainment is impossible not to reach by those who continue to love God with all their hearts, soul, mind, and strength, and who continue to abide in that love. As one reaches the great Christ door, he will know the reality behind the Savior's words. I am the resurrection and the life, and he who believeth in me shall never die. Believest thou this? Yes, do you believe it? If you will but follow his voice to that door and open the door, you will not only believe, you will know. Within the principles of the great Christ vibration which leads one to that door is contained the forgiveness for every error and mistake and weakness. There is the power to forgive every trespassing transgression of one's brother. There is the power of selfish devotion and the sacrificing strength to offer one's personal will in complete surrender to the divine will of God. In it is contained the law of perfect love carried to its complete fulfillment of power, and the law of giving double for every demand made upon one's time or possessions. and the triumphant, undismayed, unretaliating majesty of loving compassion offered for every violence. This is the path Christ marked. This is the road that leads to the door. This is the way he traveled as he beckoned man to follow. There is only one possible way to follow this path he marked, that is, to live it. For this reason, it has been known as a straight and narrow road and difficult to find or travel. All the theorizing in the world will not fulfill it. All the billions of words gathered into sermons have not fulfilled it. All the teachings of all the churches in Christendom have not fulfilled it. This way that Christ marked is the way within each man as he seeks to overcome himself and his weaknesses in a devotion that is beyond words and creed and even churches. It is the way of overcoming as one follows him who marked the path that leads to life eternal. The way whereby man can actually know God, the Father, and Jesus Christ, whom he hath sent. This does not mean to know about them. It means to know them. Live these laws he gave, and you will know whether they be of God or whether Christ was just giving out words as the ministers today do. There are those who actually say that it is blasphemy to think one could live as Christ lived, or to imagine that one is to be perfect, even as the Father in heaven is perfect. These are the ones who built upon a sandy foundation and tremble lest they shall fall. Because of their inward wickedness, they fear, knowing that they could not reach so great a glory without giving up their sins which they love, and their weaknesses which they cannot or will not make the effort to overcome. And they deny the very teaching of Jesus Christ. But their voice is only the voice of the weak and wicked ones who refuse to live his laws that they might know. They would not make the effort to overcome one transgressing weakness for all the promises he gave. Let their dried-up voices seek to deter you if you will. Join them if you like. But if you have any power to believe or to desire or hope to fulfill the promise Christ gave, then arise and begin to shake off the dust of ages and the sleep of centuries, and follow that call crying in your own soul. Only listen to his voice as it calls to you from within, and open the door. Open it through love and praise and worship. As one begins to live these principles which Christ gave his life to reveal, he learns that the path of holiness is the path contained right within himself. It is the only natural law of his own inner being. This is the only pathway of achievement, of glory and happiness and power. And one will know that he himself is the temple of the living God. As one begins to actually live these higher laws or principles, not just believe in them, he knows that the divine light of Christ is given to abide in every man who cometh into the world. He will also know that this light of Christ within himself truly contains the powers of his own redemption and of his renewal and resurrection. He will then comprehend the following in its fullness. It is given to abide in you the record of heaven, the comforter, the peaceable things of immortal glory, the truth of all things, that which quickeneth all things, and maketh alive all things, that which knoweth all things, and hath all power. One will know as he begins to live the higher laws, even as the glorified writer of the Odes of Solomon, which means Odes of Wisdom, knew. And he who knew and brought me up is the Most High in all his perfection, and he glorified me by his kindness, and raised my thoughts to the height of his truth. And from thence he gave me of his precepts, and I opened the doors that were closed. And I brake in pieces the bars of iron, but my iron melted and dissolved before me. Nothing appeared closed to me, because I was the door to everything. As one follows that divine voice within, will all naturally reach the great Christ door, as the flower will reach the point of its unfolding. As one at last kneels before that door with his whole being opened and humbled in loving adoration, that door will open, and he will be filled with light, and will truly comprehend all things, that will be no darkness in him. This means to literally comprehend all things. It does not mean that one will think he knows everything. To think one knows everything is the greatest darkness of all. To think one knows everything without having been anointed with light, or having opened the great Christ door to the fullness of his light, is as ridiculous as it would be for a man who had been born blind to describe the colors in a sunset. And after one reaches the point where he actually knows God the Father and Jesus Christ, He does not tell it. He is so melted in love and tenderness, so filled with reverence and humility. The light fills his being and bears witness of him. He no longer needs to go forth bearing witness of it. It is even as Christ said, "Believe me for the very work's sake." Just to think one knows all things is as the darkness of midnight. To comprehend all things by the great light of Christ is as a light of noonday in its beauty of pure revealing powers of extended external vision. It is when that great Christ door is opened, and one is filled with light, or is anointed with light, that he comprehends, as all have comprehended who have opened the door, that he himself is a door to everything. Before the door is opened, one beholds, through its lighted translucence, the image of Christ. He sees it as through a glass dimly. But as the door is opened, he not only sees Christ, he knows him. The keys to this great Christ door are easy to use. The keys are but the greatest of all vibrations, as it is held in the hands of one who understands. It is the great Christ vibration alone that can open the door. This Christ vibration is a love and praise and singing, glorified gratitude of melting thanks that has been developed in the heart of the individual as he has followed the light within. It is as one kneels before the great Christ door of glory, with love pouring out through his whole being in a song of everlasting adoration, that the door will swing softly, slowly open. As one finally realizes that the great Christ door is slowly swinging out, he finds it is only a veil that has grown very, very thin through his own growing faith and love and praise and gratitude. When that veil finally separates, one will know that it has been the veil of his own unbelief. He will also know that the veil was rent from top to bottom when Christ gave his life as a supreme sacrifice for the sins of the world. When one accepts of his divine offering and his light, that veil will be rent from the individual. It will be rent literally from top to bottom, and it will then be dissolved. As that veil is rent, one realizes that his own fervent search into the light has at last conquered that veil, and the unbelief and darkness will be completely overcome. He will know then that the great unbelief of man has constructed that almost impregnable wall, the veil of darkness. He will then comprehend fully that unbelief is the greatest possible wickedness of all. For this is the will of the Father, that you believe on him whom he has sent. If you have ever wondered what his will is for you, then know that this is his will for you, to believe on the light of Christ that is given to abide in you. Believe in this, and his complete will can be worked out in glory for you in its all fullness. It has been man's unbelief that has caused the great darkness of the ages. Cain glorified in his wickedness, which wickedness was unbelief. It was his unbelief that led to the great crime of transgression. All wickedness is manifested most powerful in its strident unbelief. Unbelief is never meek nor humble. It is always noisy and destructive, as it seeks only to tear down and disprove. This very unbelief of man is the gross darkness that has covered the earth. In Paul's divine record of charity, one of the powers contained in the pure love of Christ is the power to believe all things. To believe all things, one must of necessity believe in the life Christ lived, in the laws he gave, and the power of his promises. This very belief would demand that one seeks to live those same laws, that he might be purified even as Christ is pure, or that he might be perfect even as the Father in heaven is perfect. One has to face the truth of these admonitions if he believes. The whole world has remained in darkness because none have been willing to believe, hence live the laws he gave. None have been willing to exert the effort needed to let go of their own pattern of thoughts, their pet ideas, their unorthodox beliefs, their individual lust, which have led to the evil and error of each man's life. No, none have been actually willing to live his laws, that they might know the truth. God has given the command to prove all things, and to hold fast to that which is good. Man has sought only to disprove all things, even the very existence of God and the light of Christ, which is given to abide within himself. And as he has called that which is good evil, the great wickedness of unbelief has increased on the earth. and its gross darkness has been intensified generation after generation. If there are those who have not actively sought to disprove truth, they have remained almost neutral regarding it. Their very neutrality has been carried to the point of ignoring it altogether. This very ignorance has been the cause of the great ignorance. None can ask, seek, or knock without being enlightened. The law of God is that all prayers must be answered. He who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it will be opened. Or ask and you shall receive. The very ignoring on the part of humanity has been almost as great a transgression as the wickedness of seeking only to disprove. The voices of those seeking to tear down and disprove are always louder than the voice of truth. Truth never hurls itself out violently, seeking only to beat to pieces everything in its way. It moves gently, almost silently, as it tiptoes by in its softly lighted glory. It is never strident, never oppressive, never loud nor rancorous. Only its persuasive sweetness have been left to battle the noise of the destroyers. Those who seek to disprove all things have been the slayers of the prophets and the crucifiers of truth from the beginning. And they have lost the power to be taught, neither can they comprehend the light, for every effort is bent on extinguishing it. These are the ones who have rejected that light of Christ, which has been given to abide in them as they walk in the darkness at noonday. They are under their own condemnation, for they love darkness rather than light. Their hearts are sealed with the seals of many generations of unyielding. They comprehend nothing of yielding themselves to the pure directing of the Holy Spirit of God, nor how to lend themselves to its loving directing. Their every thought and act and word is hurled out from their own meager, limited understanding, as they have learned from minute God. There is not much excuse for spiritual blindness, for it is always a willful thing, or a condition that is caused entirely by one's own willfulness. Spiritual blindness is caused by one being filled with the things he wills, instead of with the will of God. Such are completely blinded by their own willfulness, and are filled with darkness, for they cannot see, nor comprehend the light. These are the ones who reject the light of Christ that has been given to abide in them, and are hence under condemnation. These spiritually blind ones, who are too sealed in the darkness of their own meager knowledge to even begin to comprehend truth, compare everything that comes to them with their previous store of beliefs, and if it contains one new grain of truth, it is violently and instantly rejected. Each person who rejects light has assisted, through perhaps unknowingly, in placing the seal of darkness upon the whole world to a greater, more deadening degree. Their voices uphold the darkness, and their lives conform to it. These are the ones who have never learned to be still and know that I am God. This inner voice of God that can only be heard in the stillness of one's own being has never been contacted by them. These poor benighted ones who are blinded by their own willing are in their far greater darkness than they realize. And often they think they have all the light. They do not know that they are poor, wretched, miserable, blind, and naked. They even think they possess all truth. They may crave love desperately, but they cannot give it out. Their fountains of love have run dry, and they are both unloving and unlovable as a rule. They may be very passionate and think passion is love, but it is not. Passion and lust are only the physical traits and cravings of the flesh. They are animal. Love is spiritual and is of God. It is divine and gentle and humble and desirous of accepting truth rather than stridently seeking to disprove it. Anyone who seeks to disprove anything that teaches one to love and serve God are working in blindness and error and will be held accountable. There is an ancient Arabian proverb which states, "He who knows not and knows not that he knows not is a fool. Avoid him. He who knows not and knows that he knows not is simple. Teach him. He who knows and knows not that he knows is asleep. Wake him. He who knows and knows that he knows is a wise man. Follow him." God can only speak through an open, tender heart, one that is completely stilled through love and deep reverence, as it has learned to listen to the inward voice, or that still small voice, of his directing. His noble and great ones instantly recognize truth and accept it, for they are his elect and his chosen. It is the ones who are teachable whom God is gathering. They who are inheritors of light are his jewels, for they have followed the light of his leading. There is no need for any to remain blind. Spiritual blindness is caused primarily by unbelief. The very unbelief which causes spiritual blindness is man's own unwillingness to seek to know whether a thing is true or not. He assumes that it is false because it does not conform to his preconceived ideas. It is when one assumes that he knows all truth that he fails to ask of God or to give to the matter in question the test God has provided, whereby a man need never err. Neither is he willing to acknowledge that God said, "Anything which teaches a man to love and serve God and to pray is of God." Nor will he acknowledge that there are none so blind as those who will not see. It is the ability to believe the release of the very powers of heaven as one learns to be still. He willingly and of his own accord enters the Holy of Holies within his own being or temple. And as he learns to enter that sacred realm of pure spirit, he will learn the powers of God centered in his being. He who has learned to be still has reached the point of power. He will actually know the great, "I am God," and God is power. It is then that the ineffable power of God will be man's to use. This is the only manner in which one can actually know God and Jesus Christ whom he has sent. As one follows that light of Christ which has been given to abide in him, he will learn of its peace and its power. And as he continues to follow that light until the Christ door is revealed and opened, he will eventually know God and receive of his fullness. All the searching on the outside can never reveal God. The revelation of God is a thing of comprehension and is fulfilled in the words, "Be still and know that I am God." This is the point. This is the point of divine contact with God. This is the point of inner stillness and ineffable power. It is the point where one contacts God and his powers become active in one's life. It is then that the things that are amiss are straightened out, the lacks are filled, whether morally, physically, financially, or spiritually. This is the point of joyous ecstasy, as one's own sacred pattern of life is brought to the point of complete fruition. This contact with God is the point of unspeakable power, and this contact with the Almighty is pure heaven, and the kingdom of heaven is within you. This is the way Christ marked. It is the way he followed. It is the way of holiness and leads to Zion, the place of complete purification of the heart. It is man's power to believe that opens the great Christ door, which is the veil of the temple. When the great door is opened, one is henceforth filled with the light. Surely it is easy to comprehend that to be filled with light necessitates an inward condition. It has to be something within, and to be filled with the fullness of God also is an inward attainment. It is the inward path which leads to the great Christ door, or the door to heaven, that has never been comprehended. It has been ignored because of the great blind ignorance of man as he has followed the path of his own leading. As one follows the path Christ marked, he will of necessity reach the great Christ door. This is the door to heaven. This is a doorway to the higher kingdom in which a man need not die. It is the great front door that bypasses death. This is the way in which one reaches the point where he actually knows God, the Father, and Jesus Christ, whom he has sent. And this is the point where all things will be subjected unto man, both in heaven and on earth. The life and the light, the spirit and the power sent forth by the will of the Father through Jesus Christ his Son. For as the inward path is followed, the outward life conforms to it. Unbelief alone has caused the world to remain in its awful state of wickedness. And who shall say that Jesus Christ did not do many mighty miracles? And there were many mighty miracles wrought by the hands of the apostles. And if there were miracles wrought then, why has God ceased to be a God of miracles, and yet be an unchangeable being? And behold, I say unto you, he changeth not. Is so he would cease to be God, and he ceaseth not to be God, and is a God of miracles. And the reason why he ceases to do miracles among the children of men is because they dwindle in unbelief, and depart from the right way, and know not the God in whom they should trust. Behold, I say unto you that whoso believeth in Christ, doubting nothing, whatsoever he shall ask the Father in the name of the Christ, it shall be granted him. and the promise is unto all, even unto the ends of the earth. Yea, nothing is impossible to him who believes. And Christ truly said unto our fathers, If ye have faith, ye can do all things which are expedient unto me. And now I speak unto all the ends of the earth. And if the day cometh that the power and gifts of God shall be done away among you, it shall be because of unbelief. And woe be unto the children of men, if this be the case. For there shall be none that doeth good among you, no, not one. For if there be one among you that doeth good, he shall work by the power and gifts of God. And woe unto them who shall do these things away and die, for they shall die in their sins, and they cannot be saved in the kingdom of God. And I speak it according to the words of Christ, and I lie not. Such is the unbelief that has engulfed the world, and the darkness has increased upon this earth, according to the degree of unbelief that has remained in the hearts of the children of men. This very unbelief has forced the race of men to follow their tortuous path of pain and sickness, dismay and suffering, and endless wars around to that dismal, dreary back door of death. Come unto me, O ye house of Israel, and it shall be made manifest unto you the great things the Father hath laid up for you, from the foundation of the world, and it hath not come unto you because of unbelief. Behold, when you shall rend the veil of unbelief, which doth cause you to remain in your awful state of unwickedness, and hardness of hearts, and blindness of minds, then shall the great and marvelous things which have been hid up from the foundation of the world from you be made known. This belief that is required does not demand that one must believe in any particular church or creed, for they too are all engulfed in the same great darkness of unbelief. If there were any who believed, they would be doing the works which he did. They would not just be holding the empty forms without the power. All forms are empty and in vain, unless there is the power of the Almighty accompanying them. Without the power, one but takes his name in vain, and will not be held guiltless. And along with the power to perform any miracle, there must also be the great Christ-love of divine charity, else his works are meaningless and empty. But if one has fulfilled, or is fulfilling, these two greatest of all commandments, he has fulfilled all the laws. The belief that is required is that a man believe in God, believe in the power of his promises, believe in the life Christ lived. And as you live his teachings, you will, of necessity, live as he lived. And you will go on to that degree of perfection, where you will be purified, even as he is pure. The unbelief is so great at the present time, it is even as Christ foretold. They will make a man a liar for a word. That is true, for if he misquotes a single word, he is proclaimed a liar. They do more. They even take a man and make him a liar for a comma. Man is letter and tradition bound. In this great unbelief he holds blindly to the letter of the law so strenuously, though often it has been mistranslated, without having any contact whatsoever with the spirit of the power of the Almighty. Live his laws, and you will know of their truth. Forgive as you would be forgiven. Give double for every demand made upon thee. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Think no evil. Let your eyes be single to his glory instead of your own. Take no thought of what you shall eat, nor what you shall wear, but trust in the Lord with all your heart. That is very simple when you have learned to love him with all your heart and mind and soul, and you will trust him to the extent that you can rejoice in anything that comes. You will be able to thank him in all things and in all conditions, and you will be made glorious. With this love and trust and gratitude thus exerted, you will be given power to overcome all the evils of your life and will walk in glory. If anyone smites you upon the one cheek, turn the other also. Turn it in such a loving devotion and tender compassion, his evil and hate can be healed in your divine reaction. Pray for those who despitefully use you and persecute you. These are the laws he gave. These are the laws one is to believe in. As one lives these teachings, he will know of their power and their truth. And for those who live the laws, that veil of unbelief will be torn asunder, and they will actually know Christ, not just know about him. And to know him and the Father is life eternal. As one, through belief, which is proved by living his teaching, opens that veil, he will be completely filled with light, and will comprehend all things. This divine power of comprehension reveals the truth of all things. It holds the power to comprehend even God. It holds the complete knowledge of death, its causes, and how to overcome it. This knowledge opens up the great front door, and the back door of death is never known. These are the promises, or the Word of God, in which one must believe, and these are but the natural results of the natural, divine laws which he gave. These are the powers of the light of Christ, which is given to abide in every man who cometh into the world. If he rejects not the light, from here on in, every one who rends the veil will make it easier for those who follow. For each who rends the veil is assisting in building a divine highway to the very throne of God. You great and noble ones who have the power of belief developed sufficiently to take hold of the light of Christ, and who are willing to live the laws he gave, he will help you to rend that veil of darkness from the whole earth. And into your hands will be placed the key of the new age as you step beyond all dead, orthodox forms into the great light of his power. You who are willing to shake off the sleep of ages and obey his teachings by leaving your own dull, meaningless patterns of thought and habits behind. There is no power that will be denied you as you give yourselves and your lives, your great living lives, to prove his words. Yea, prove all things, and know this: the entire universe is awaiting your coming in breathless solicitude. No struggle nor effort on your part will be unnoticed or ignored. If you can only begin or even desire to believe, there will be legions to lend you assistance. If it is difficult for you to believe, but you desire greatly, then let this prayer of long ago find an echo in your heart. Lord, help thou my unbelief. The easiest way to describe the Christ door is to say that it is a door associated completely with consciousness. The knowledge of that door can only be attained through the gift and power of conscious awareness, which of course is based entirely on the power to believe, for it is completely spiritual in essence. As one becomes aware of this light of Christ, which is given to abide in him, by believing the words of Christ, he begins to concentrate his thoughts upon the truth of his word. His belief grows with this conscious awareness until it becomes absolute knowing. It is the light as it begins to penetrate one's consciousness that develops the power to rejoice, to praise, and to love and give thanks. Just the ability to adore in this manner is the light beginning to be made manifest within. As this joy and praise and gratitude increases, the light becomes more and more manifest in one's life as the difficulties melt before it and the joys increase. As one learns to become constantly aware of this divine Christ light within, he finally becomes completely conscious of its reality. This complete conscious awareness is a state of knowing. It is then one does know, to such that Christ's door at last swings open wide, and to such it can never be closed again. It becomes, even as the writer of the Odes of Solomon proclaimed, "And he who knew and brought me up is the Most High in all his perfection. And he glorified me by his kindness, and raised my thoughts or consciousness to the heights of his truth. And from thence he gave me of his precepts, and I opened the door that were closed. Nothing appeared closed to me, because I was the door to everything." It is the spirit essence, known as awareness or consciousness, that is the door. It is man's awareness of his own eternal identity that reveals that door. It is a knowledge or conscious awareness of the Spirit of truth. Yea, we were also in the beginning with the Father, that which is Spirit, even the Spirit of truth. Man was truly that Spirit of truth in the beginning. He is still that Spirit of truth. Only his awareness of it must be restored through his own efforts to contact that light of Christ within. Man's consciousness or awareness is the door to that great eternal truth which will make him free. It is the consciousness of the great door, or eternal Spirit of truth, that is the door. It is man's inner awakening through love and praise and worship which reveals what he himself is. As one goes inward into the sacred temple of his own being and learns to be still, he will discover the great secret of truth contained within himself. As this great Christ door is opened through conscious awareness or focused attention and desire, one reaches the point where he becomes filled with light and comprehends all things. This is when one actually knows Christ, not just knows about him, and this is the point of all power.